What if everything you had, your family, your wealth, your health, was stripped away in an instant? How would you respond? This is the question at the heart of one of the most powerful and perplexing stories in the Bible, the story of Job. In a land called Uz, there was a man named Job. He wasn't just a man of means. He was a man of integrity. He had 10 children, thousands of livestock, and a household so large that he was considered the greatest man in the East. But more importantly, Job was devoted to God. Every morning, he would wake up and make sacrifices, not just for himself but for his children, just in case they had unknowingly sinned. That's how much he revered God. But what happens when devotion is tested? When suffering arrives not as a consequence of wrongdoing but seemingly out of nowhere? Far beyond Job's awareness, a conversation was unfolding in the divine realm. God, proud of his faithful servant, pointed Job out to the adversary, Satan. But Satan was skeptical. He argued that Job's righteousness was conditional, built on the blessings God had given him. "Take it all away," Satan challenged, "and he will curse you to your face." It was a wager unlike any other. God permitted Satan to test Job, but with one restriction: he could not lay a hand on Job himself. And so, the trial began. Job's world unraveled in a single day. A servant rushed in with tragic news. Raiders had stolen Job's oxen and donkeys, killing the field workers. Before Job could even process this, another messenger arrived. Fire had rained from the heavens, consuming his sheep and the servants tending them. Then came the third. His camels had been taken by invaders. And finally, the most devastating blow. His children, all 10 of them, had died in a house collapse caused by a violent windstorm. Loss after loss, like waves crashing over him. Yet Job did not curse God. Instead, he tore his robe, shaved his head in mourning, and fell to the ground, not in despair, but in worship. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. But Satan was not satisfied. He returned to God, claiming Job had only remained faithful because he still had his health. So God allowed Satan to afflict Job's body, but not take his life. Pain erupted across Job's skin, boils, oozing and raw. His suffering was so unbearable that even his wife, broken by grief, urged him, "Curse God and die." But Job refused. Then, his friends arrived. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. They sat with him for 7 days in silence, sharing in his grief. But when they finally spoke, their words stung like salt on an open wound. They argued that Job's suffering must be his fault, that he had sinned and was now facing divine justice. But Job knew better. He hadn't wronged God. He pleaded for an audience with the Almighty, demanding answers. Why was this happening to him? Where was justice? The voice from the storm. Then, out of a whirlwind, God spoke. For chapters, Job had demanded explanations, but instead of answers, God responded with questions. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Can you command the morning? Do you give the horse its strength? God's response wasn't about explanations. It was about perspective. Job was reminded of the vastness of God's wisdom and power, of how little humans understand the grand design. Job, humbled, responded, "I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know." In the end, God restored Job, not just his wealth, but his health, his family, and his honor. He blessed him with twice as much as before. But more than that, Job's relationship with God deepened. He had seen suffering, and he had seen God. His story is more than just one of loss and restoration. It's a story of trust, of faith that withstands even the darkest trials, and of a God who remains sovereign even when we don't understand his ways. So, the question remains, when suffering comes, will you trust? With that said, thanks for watching. Until next time.